Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. As you guys can see, we are in the garage today, and today we'll be working on the Corvette yet again. And today we actually will be working on the Corvette. What we're gonna do today is actually get the engine into the car. So you guys will see that I've kind of already started. I put the engine mounts back on, put the valve covers on, I sealed up the top of the motor with some tape. And yeah, that's pretty much about it. What I'm gonna do next is put the clutch assembly back together. I gotta get the engine off the stand first. Put the clutch on it, and then we're gonna sling it into the engine bay and hopefully get everything lined up. Now, you guys will notice that I have kind of created a mess down here. I'm not sure if you can see that, but you can see that up front. Bunch of oil. I actually deleted the oil cooler last night, and I went back in here and cleaned up a bunch of the harness. When I had taped up the harness during the initial LS9 install, I had missed some pieces because it was simply back behind the motor. I couldn't reach it. And, I decided to take the time to fix it now. Just basically more loom, more tape. And yeah, so just cleaning up some things. So I spent like an hour or two back here last night, getting all that stuff out, getting that wire loom fixed up. And so yeah, hopefully the install goes pretty smoothly. I don't anticipate running into any huge issues. The only thing that's going to be different is that I did leave the harmonic balancer off. I have left the AC compressor bracket off. And the other difference is we do have the cylinder heads and the valve covers on. So that might create an issue later. I'm just not sure. But, so kind of a different packaging than when we got the block out. So should be fun. I do have an engine load leveler. I'm going to try not to use it at first because I simply just don't want to take everything back apart. But if we have to, I do have that load leveler to help get the engine at the right angle. I'm just not sure. I watched my engine removal video and it came out just the perfect angle. So hopefully, just using the chain setup in this middle bracket right here, that middle hole, hopefully we can get everything lined up and slid onto the torque tube. That's my biggest worry, is getting everything lined up for the input shaft and all that lining up in the back. Got the engine off the stand, obviously. It's now sitting down on the ground. And back here, because we do have a manual transmission, we do have to put a new pilot bushing in, input bushing, whatever you want to call it. This is going to be GM part number 12557583. And how you install this is pretty simple. You simply just kind of put it into place, hit it with the socket. So we got a 30 mil axle socket. Yeah, 30 millimeter. And we're just gonna tap it in like that, and we should be good to go. All right, got that tapped in. Just use that 30 mil socket, tap it in like that. You're good to go. Let's go grab the clutch, our clutch alignment tool, and go from there. All right, guys, here's the ever exciting clutch install on a Corvette with the RXT twin disc from McLeod. My number one recommendation is to find an old input shaft, because this is the only thing that I ever found that was metal and would allow you to line up both discs without issue. I've tried the plastic clutch alignment tools in the past and they simply don't work. Especially when I was under the car, obviously not outside of the car, but when I was under the car trying to get this clutch aligned, trying to get the input shaft from the torque tube installed, this thing would never go in. Finally, I gave up after a couple of days. I bought one of these spare input shafts, and I think I spent 60 bucks. I just looked on eBay for a used one, throw it in, plug it in, and you're good to go. And this is metal. It's not gonna bend or fatigue like a plastic one will. Now, you will see that I do have the ARP studs installed. ARP calls for 75 foot-pounds and their Ultra Torque assembly lube. I don't follow that. I use their bolts, but I use red Loctite and I use the GM Torque specs. The GM Torque specs are 15, 37, and then 74. So there's a 3-step with red Loctite. Get all that and you're good to go. So now we're pretty much ready to install the twin disc. So, I marked these bottom flywheel sides so it would go in like that. Then you're gonna put in the middle disc, and then the flywheel side, and then the pressure plate. Basically fish this input shaft through the first disc, and then you're gonna put it into the middle pressure plate, and then the other disc, and then you're gonna put that on as assembly, put it on here, line everything up, and start to torque things down. All right, guys, so this is kind of hard to see, but you can see the first flywheel disc, you can see the middle pressure plate, then you can see the outside flywheel disc. See, if you spin it, only the flywheel discs are moving. And yeah, so Like I was saying, if you didn't have this metal shaft or clutch alignment tool, whatever you want to call it, it's just a spare input shaft like I was saying, this thing would not go in. And then the other thing you guys got to worry about all at the same time, you see this white mark? That is the alignment stripe. So there's a white mark here, there's a blue stripe here, and then on the outside of the pressure plate, there's another mark somewhere right there. See that black mark? That all has to be aligned because that's kind of how this thing is weighted. So outer mark, inner mark on the inside pressure plate, and then the outer mark on the outside, the red pressure plate. You got to keep this all aligned. But yeah, so we've got everything aligned. All right, guys, so the floater disc torques down to 25 foot-pounds. These are the ones with the gold studs. The red ones, which are for the pressure plate, those will torque down to 35 foot-pounds. All the alignment marks, so black mark here, black mark on the floater plate, and then a white mark on the flywheel. That's your alignment tab. Torqued all the bolts down to 35 foot-pounds. If you guys can see, the input shaft slides right out. So once you get it lined up, it goes right in. So, you know, that's really what you want. Alright guys, I've been kind of a crappy YouTuber, I apologize for that, but the engine is in, it is bolted to the bell housing. I've got, I think like 6 out of the 8 bolts, or 5 out of 7, however many bolts there are. I've got a bunch of the bolts in, and I'll be honest, there's no easy way of showing how I got the motor lined up. Actually, I'm not even sure how I got the motor lined up, but it went in perfectly, and I did get some longer bolts that go into the bell housing. I don't know what thread or pitch they are, but I basically wanted something to guide the bell housing and the engine together, and all I did was kind of go around the motor. I went to the top, I started at the top because that's the easiest bolt to access. Went to the oil pan, I put one there, I put another one on the other side of the oil pan, and I kind of just tightened it and tightened it. Now guys, when I'm saying tightened, hand tight. I didn't over torque these or anything because I have stripped out an oil pan bolt doing that before. I learned my lesson. You know, just hand tight, stopped when it got tight, moved to the next bolt, and kind of did that. So while I was doing that, I was kind of messing around with the elevation of the motor, you know, the height. I raised it, lowered it. Basically, once I got it to its final height, kind of left it there. And then what I did was, over here on the driver's side, you guys should see the arm of the jack, of the floor jack down there. I just put the floor jack underneath the oil pan because the motor was sitting like this. I needed to straighten out to slide into that torque tube input shaft, and basically what I did was I flattened that out. So that just kind of led to a combination of, you know, lowering it, raising the back end, and all at the same time pushing it back toward the firewall. And I did that by putting a box wrench into the legs of the engine hoist, and yeah, that pretty much kind of led us to getting it lined up, and I was able to stick bolts in it. And then once I got the bolts in it, I didn't have to mess around with the elevation pitch or anything like that. Like I said, I just put those bolts in, the longer threaded bolts, and slowly just tightened, you know, kind of in a circular pattern until finally I got the very top bolt. You guys can't see it, but that very top bolt, I got that in there tightened all the way compressed, and then I'm like, okay, cool. Went down bottom, got the oil pan bolts tightened. Then I got the 2 bolts that are kind of by the starter, and there's 2 over here underneath the brake master cylinder. And yeah, I just got everything tight, and I eventually took those long bolts out, put the factory bolts in, and those all torqued down to 37 foot-pounds. All right, guys, I don't know if you can tell, but I've spent the last hour cleaning this place up. It looked like something, it looked like a bomb had gone off in here. I had to make room for the engine hoist to get through here, and get up and over. So, yeah, the engine might look exactly the same like it did earlier, but yeah, I torqued down all the bell housing bolts to 37 foot-pounds. You know, we're good to go there. I got all the harnesses routed, and all the little eyelets, I got those all screwed in on the back. And yeah, so right now the engine is actually sitting on a jack stand underneath the car. I should put the subframe on it, but like I said, I've got a whole bunch of stuff under there. I've got to drill the crank. I've got to make sure that hub is pushed all the way in. I got to put the ARP bolt in for the final time. I've got to deal with the air compressor for the AC, put that bracket in, tighten all that down. And with that subframe in there, you simply can't do any of that. So yeah, that is going to be it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed it, hit that like button. If you guys want to see more updates on the Corvette, putting it back together, putting the supercharger back in it, putting the fuel system, all that stuff. If you guys want to see all those videos, hit that subscribe button, turn on your bell notifications. If you guys want to help support the channel, check out the links down below for the tools and stuff that we use today. And also make sure you check out our website, BonecrrusherSS.com. Any contribution you guys can make there, go right back into the channel, the motor, this project, the shop, and all that. So thanks, guys. Have a great one.